Alright guys, so in this video I played Assassin's Creed 3 in 2023. Yes, a return to the series which I started just over 8 months ago, which is crazy that it's gone that quick, where I basically go through all of the Assassin's Creed games in order and I do an updated present day review of the game and give you advice on if it's still worth buying and if it still holds up today, as well as my own initial thoughts on the game, which I really enjoy doing. And I managed to get up to Black Flag last time after, for some odd reason, and I don't know why, but I skipped over 3, but now I have returned to the long-awaited review for the third main game of this series, and of course I'll be carrying on in order, which should also be a lot better now that it's transferred over to PC, and the video should also improve a little bit. And now with Unity up next, so if you would like to see that, then you can subscribe to the channel, and if you would want to check out the previous videos in the series, you can go ahead. Without further ado, let's jump into the Assassin's Creed 3 review and see what is up. So the game itself is actually set during the American Revolution, and the story basically follows the journey of Connor Kenway, a half Mohawk, half English assassin who is trying to defend him and his people from the organization of the Templars, which is a pattern that kind of runs through a lot of the games. And throughout the game, playing as Connor, you must navigate through the revolution, meaning you deal with and try to stop the plans of the Templars. Although a big catch and one of the biggest criticisms of Assassin's Creed 3 is the length of the opening sequence, where you don't actually play as the main protagonist of Connor, you actually play as his father, Haytham Kenway. So you play the game from a Templar's perspective, which was a very interesting and quite a different way to introduce the game, which I really didn't have a problem with, although I did have a problem with how long it actually takes to get into it. It takes several hours to get to the heart of the story, so some players may find it slow and sort of tedious. Now, while the game opening sequence does serve to establish the game's setting and characters, it could sort of be condensed down to make the game's pacing feel more balanced, and it just feels so long until you eventually switch to the actual protagonist, and even then you play a few hours of training to be an assassin, which it still hasn't even started, so it's slightly annoying when all players kind of want to do is actually play as an assassin and start to assassinate people. Although the story can be controversial and long to open up, I do feel that it is fairly well written and engaging and provides a fresh perspective on the American Revolution, and the game's historical accuracy is very commendable, and players can learn a great deal about the time period by then, and they explore the game's world and interact with its characters. However, as said, it can be slow and long-winded at times, and some players may find it difficult to sort of stay invested in the game's narrative for long periods of time. Now, Assassin's Creed 3 is a departure from the previous titles in the series in many ways. The game introduces a new protagonist, a new setting, a new combat system. Now, while these changes were refreshing, some players may feel that the game lacks the same level of polish and excitement that made the previous titles so popular. The game's world can also feel not as engaging due to the immense amount of travelling from one place to another. Although most of the time you can fast travel, some players may find it kind of stops the pacing of the game and slows it down, and they don't find it flowing as well due to how many different fast travel moments there are. Pretty much almost every mission, where although it doesn't feel like long, you just go through a loading screen each time because of the different places where you keep going back and forth from them, which can get a bit annoying because there is a lot of it in the game. And despite its flaws, Assassin's Creed 3 is still a worthwhile game to play in 2023. The game's combat system as well is also a highlight, offering players a variety of ways to engage in combat and take down enemies. Additionally, the game's improved stealth missions as well and parkour mechanics are a welcome improvement to the series. Now, there is some things that could be better, and there's several areas where Assassin's Creed 3 could have been improved. So the game's world, while impressive in scale, it can feel sort of empty and lifeless at times. As mentioned in the game's opening, it also is notoriously long, taking several hours to get to the Connor bit, and the game's like I said, the game's pacing can be slow, especially during the early proportions of the game, and that's the main thing that they could have improved on, I would say. Now, is it the worst in the series? Assassin's Creed 3 is often regarded as one of the weaker entries in the series, but it is no means the worst. While the game does have its flaws, it still offers a great experience. Many players may prefer the more polished and refined experiences offered by previous titles, but Assassin's Creed 3 still has, a lot to offer. Assassin's Creed 3 also introduced several new features and improvements to the game, which were a lot different from previous. The game's combat system, like I said, it was completely overhauled, offering players a more fluid and dynamic combat experience. The game's stealth missions were also improved, offering players more options for assassinating targets, and also a brand new thing was the hunting mechanic, basically allowing players to hunt and skin animals for resources, which was really cool actually. And even then, it was also in the training of Connor, which did go on for a long time, but that was a pretty cool mechanic to learn. Also, the game's parkour system was also slightly refined, not a lot, but it was slightly, allowing players to traverse the game's world more easily and efficiently. One of the most significant improvements in Assassin's Creed 3 was the introduction of naval battles. Now, these missions allowed players to command their own ship and engage in battles against enemy ships, and the naval combat, it was well received by players, and they later of course expanded it in the game's sequel, Assassin's Creed Black Flag. And moving back to the combat, it is one of the game's strongest aspects, I would say. Of course, we could still, do the chain attacks seamlessly, making combat feel more satisfying and rewarding. The game also offers a variety of weapons and tools to use, quite a lot actually, allowing players to, approach combat in a way that sort of suits their playstyle. And there's just so many different options. It's definitely one of my favourites in the game, or in the whole series, I mean. And there is slightly more options for the stealth missions for a more of a varied and satisfying stealth experience. As seen before, of course, we can hide in bushes and hay like usual and can be used alongside. What I love is how many stealth missions there actually are, and there's not too many, not too little. It's also just, it's fairly varied each time, so it doesn't really become tedious. They're not always just the same thing, and I did actually really enjoy the stealth in this game. Now, moving on to the characters and what they're like, of course, Connor is the protagonist. He's a sort of complex and well-developed character though. He is definitely driven to sort of protect his people and do anything what's right for him. That's what I was gathering, and some players may find, him to be sort of stale and unemotional, but this is in keeping with his character's sort of personality and background, where some may see him as quite upfront and at times sort of aggressive. But it was sort of hard because, they wanted it to be different. They didn't want it to always be the same as, of course, Ezio, which was, it's quite hard to beat that. So it was quite cool having a very different person. It would be quite boring if they were all the same. And then moving on to the, Connor's father, Haytham Kenway, on the other hand, he is surprisingly different actually, and an intriguing character in his own right. He is a member of the Templar Order, however he's a charismatic and joking figure, and players may find themselves sort of sympathising with him at times, not as much as Connor, and their relationship together is a highlight of the game's story and provides a very interesting dynamic between the two characters. So in conclusion, Assassin's Creed 3 is a worthwhile game to play in 2023. While it does have its flaws, the game's story, characters and the gameplay, they're all well crafted and engaging. The game's combat system and stealth mechanics are improved over previous titles, and the introduction of naval battles and combat provides a fresh and exciting gameplay experience. While the game's pacing, as mentioned a lot, can be slow and the world may feel sort of empty at times, and the ever so long introduction into the game with playing as Haytham and training as Connor, the game's story is still enjoyable, I must say, with a well written narrative, and it offers plenty of twists and turns to keep players engaged. The game's characters are also well developed, with Connor and Haytham Kenway standing out as particularly memorable protagonists. In terms of whether or not Assassin's Creed 3 is the worst game in the series, it's quite a difficult question to answer, because like I said, while the game does have its flaws, it's still an enjoyable experience that stands up well compared to the other entries in the franchise. Ultimately, whether or not players enjoy Assassin's Creed 3, it kind of does depend on their individual preferences and expectations for the game. So whether you're a fan of the Assassin's Creed series or simply just looking for a well done action adventure game, I'd say that Assassin's Creed 3 is definitely worth checking out in 2023. And that is where we finished the video. I hope you did enjoy it. If you did, hit that like button down below. Like I said, you can subscribe to the channel to see the previous videos in the series, and of course Unity is up next. I'm excited for that. I've heard a lot of good things, the good, the bad and the ugly, so that'll be interesting. Probably one of the most controversial ones yet, but I hope you enjoyed it. Hopefully the video was informative, and maybe now you want to buy the game, maybe now you don't want to buy the game. But that is everything, and bye bye.